Hey everybody, Mike Branton here, founder of LeadershipSpringboard.com. As a new leader or someone who's aspiring to their first leadership role, nothing is more important than having an effective mentor who can help you through tough times and give you the advice that you need in order to be able to get promoted, to perform well in your role, and just to make sure that you're a good leader to the people whose careers rely on your effectiveness. Tonight we're going to talk to a mentor of mine, Ben Kipp, who has made a big impact on my career. Back in 2014, I had the opportunity to sit down with Ben for about 20 minutes and talk with him and ask him some questions that I know a lot of you would like to ask if you had the opportunity to talk with somebody who really knew well what it takes to get promoted, what it takes to spot a good leader, and how to spot somebody who's in trouble or somebody who's doing well as a leader. There's a ton of questions that we talked about, and I know you're going to find the content valuable. This table of contents that you're looking at right now will give you a guide to the different questions that I ask Ben and the different things that we talk about. I really encourage you to watch the entire interview because it's a fantastic conversation. He's a great person, he's a great leader. My career is a lot better because of having known him and worked with him, and I know that yours will be too. So I encourage you to watch the whole interview. This table of contents will help you skip around once you've watched it if you want to come back to certain pieces that really inspired you or that you want to watch again. I want to thank you for being here tonight. I hope you find this interview with Ben as enlightening and as fun to watch as I had fun filming it with him. And I hope that you find Ben to be as inspirational a leader as I did. Hey everybody, Mike Branton here. We're here with Ben Kipp today. Ben has served in a number of leadership roles, a pretty diverse set of roles at a publicly traded technology company, serving as a fourth level leader, so a leader who leads leaders who have two levels behind them, so a great set of experiences in your career, and certainly an expert on what leadership looks like. So Ben, welcome and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Good, thank you. So to start us off, do you mind telling us, kind of taking us through your leadership journey?
Sure, yeah. I've been in leadership for about 15 years. Started in big box retail, an entry-level leadership position, and had the opportunity to work my way through a few different positions in big box retail, and moved into the telecom industry about 9 years ago. And I've had an opportunity to be in a variety of different roles, as you mentioned. I've worked with retail teams, business sales teams during that time, and had a great experience in moving around a little bit and leading a lot of different types of teams. So yeah, you've had a career that's touched a lot of places in the organization that you work in. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
So, speaking of all that, all the different things that you've done, as you look back at your career, what makes you most proud so far?
Yeah, I would say the thing that probably stands out the most is maybe helping some folks to recognize some potential in themselves that may not have at first seen themselves as leaders. I think that's so impactful for me because somebody did that for me. So they recognized that potential in me and sort of gave me a little tap on the shoulder and a little encouragement to start my leadership journey. And so probably the thing I'm the most proud of is just the opportunity I've had to maybe give someone else that little tap on the shoulder and get them thinking about leadership if maybe they hadn't before, and then seeing them grow from there has been really rewarding.
Yeah, that is rewarding. That's one of the best, for me too, that's one of the best parts of leadership is seeing people develop as a result of something that you've done. Absolutely. So thinking back to when you were new, so think all the way back to when you first had your first leadership role. Yeah. When things got tough or you felt like you were in over your head, what did you do?
Well, looking back on it now, I probably did a lot of the wrong things. I tried to, kind of do it all myself a lot of times. I sort of just worked harder and tried to figure it all out on my own. So some lessons learned there, early on, and that asking for help and asking a lot of questions can be really, really helpful. So learned a lot of lessons in that first, those early days for sure.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. A lot of new leaders are sometimes afraid to ask for help because they're afraid that reflects poorly on them. Right? They feel like they should be. They put me in this role. I should be ready. I shouldn't ask for help.
Exactly. When really the opposite is often true.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing could be more true. Yeah. So, thinking back to that first year of leadership again, is there anything you wish you had done differently?
Yeah, and I suppose it's along those same lines in that, I wish I would have sought out more advice, mentors, really ask more questions and allow myself to, ask more and learn more in those early days. And likely that would have, maybe saved me some heartache early on. So
Yeah, and probably some of your direct reports as well, right?
Yeah.
So, Ben, since I've known you, you've been a huge proponent of servant leadership, right? Some of the folks watching this, if they've seen some of the things I've done before, I often talk about leaders that I've had, and that I've had some that really could have used some development themselves, right?
Sure.
And others that really were quite good. And you are one of the leaders that I've had that I model myself after even today because of your strengths in the areas of really serving the people that report to you. It's a great strength of yours. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what that looks like in your style?
Yeah, and thanks for the compliment. I think one of the most important things is just constantly challenging myself to think about, who I'm here to lead. It's easy in the business world to be very focused on ourselves and our own personal goals. It's easy to be focused on the results of the day or the month or the quarter, and not that those things aren't important, but if you get too caught up in sort of the day-to-day part of it, it's easy to lose sight of why we're really here, which is to help to grow and develop the folks that we work with, and to help our company be successful. So I think one of the main things is just really challenging myself to reflect on that and think about it often. It does get away from me even today at times for a little while, and just really pulling myself back to refocus on that regularly is something that's really important.
Yeah. So how do you remain positive? I mean, how do you regain that center that you have?
Yeah, and I think I guess part of it is I'm lucky in that I probably tend to be a glass half full kind of guy anyway, but it can be tough at times, and I think there are some things that you can do to help yourself refocus on that. Just recognizing the progress that you're making, from day to day, celebrating small victories that you have, really recognizing the people that you work with and really being on the lookout for things that they've done that you can celebrate. That really helps to turn the momentum and turn it back into a positive. And sometimes, people really need that from their leaders, that they may start feeling down as well. And as leaders, we have, an extra responsibility to make sure that if somebody's not feeling positive, that we're helping to get them back on track. They own some of it too, but as leaders, we can really help them refocus and get back to being positive.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best leaders, in my experience, have that inherently, and also do things proactively to continue to develop that skill. How did you first get involved in servant leadership? Where did you go to develop yourself?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to work with some leaders who I kind of noticed, led that way, and maybe similar to what you're doing here, just to pick their brains a little bit and really try to understand, their path, and seek out advice and things from mentors was a really important part of it. I also was fortunate to be able to go to some leadership training around it and really sought out, whether it be books or different resources to help myself, continue to learn about ways to really be a positive servant leader. There's a lot out there, and so really just, being proactive about taking that learning seriously.
Right. So changing gears now just a little bit, thinking about your role as a fourth level leader, and I mean, you've had hundreds of leaders that reported to you and even more individual contributors rolling up throughout your career. What tends to catch your eye in terms of noticing that somebody may be, quote unquote, I guess, ready for that first leadership role?
Yeah, I think the thing that normally catches my eye most is really someone who's proactive about their own development. I see a lot of folks who are kind of feels like they're waiting around for somebody to kind of tell them where to go next, and that can be helpful. And like I said earlier, that kind of got me going down a path too, that little tap on the shoulder. But I think there were other things that were happening before that, taking ownership of the team that I worked on, of my work, of really being a team player. But that proactivity really has stood out to me, and folks that are seeking out those opportunities really tend to stand out.
Yeah. Can you think of anything specific things that you may have done to get yourself noticed as being ready for that next level?
Yeah, and I think the first thing that always gets someone noticed is really being very good in their existing role. So, performing well for the team that you're on, and really excelling in your current role, that gets you noticed probably as much as anything. But aside from that, I think really looking for opportunities to grow and develop yourself. Kind of putting yourself on projects or teams that may be out of your comfort zone even a little bit. Those things really help to get noticed, and so I've had the opportunity to do a lot of that and just look for those opportunities where maybe it wouldn't be something that initially would feel very comfortable, but just find those opportunities, go after them with excitement and enthusiasm, and I always find that really is where a lot of the learning and growth has happened for me personally.
Yeah. Can you think of any specific examples, something that you may have done specifically that is helping you or has helped you make a step?
Yeah, and actually just very recently I took a new role at the company I'm in, and it's with a different type of team that I've worked with before, different customers than I've worked with before, and that really has, I've really kind of dived in to that role, and it's really helped me, to learn some new things, and energizes me a little bit. It helps me to refocus, and really that's been a great experience, and that's just even in the last 6 months.
Yeah, great. So what do you feel is a leader's number one responsibility?
I think there's actually two that are sort of, that both kind of are number one. We're hired by our company to, look out for the best interests of our company and to help to grow our business. But there's another side of that, which is to really grow and develop the people that we work with as well as leaders. And so I think those two things both work hand in hand, and you have to have a balance. That can be difficult at times. It may be easy to lean toward one or the other at times, and it's really important to strike that balance for any leader, between the best interests of the company and the best interests of the team and the folks that you lead.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree with that more. So the inverse of that, what one thing should a leader always avoid?
I think the biggest thing is making commitments or promises that you can't keep. Probably most of us have made that mistake a few times, and hopefully it's not a fatal mistake, but that is one that you definitely want to avoid.
So thinking about how to avoid that, are you thinking more along the lines of making sure you have realistic timelines, or making sure you are not getting in over your head in terms of your commitments? What is that?
I think just being realistic about what you can deliver, and sometimes maybe it's because we have a desire to really prove ourselves or deliver great results that we take on more than what we should, and then we can't deliver. I think that's probably one of the big ones, but even and that sometimes comes from making commitments to your boss or others within the company. I think with your team, agreeing to do something or making a commitment or a promise to someone on your team that you can't follow through on for one reason or another, it can be pretty detrimental. Again, I think likely we'll all make that mistake from time to time, but the less often the better, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there any common threads that you have noticed among new leaders that seem to be well positioned or seem to be doing well in their new roles?
Yeah, I think probably the thing that stands out the most is that they are very willing to learn. They ask a lot of questions. They come in with an understanding that there is a lot to learn. Sometimes new leaders want to appear to be, like they have all the answers right away. I know, again, that was a mistake that I made early on in my leadership career. I wanted to be the one that had all the answers, but oftentimes I didn't. And if we don't know the answers, really being willing to ask for help and ask for guidance, as I mentioned earlier, having mentors and people that you can go to for advice is just a big key, and that common thread, that willingness to learn in those early days of being a leader, and really throughout, but especially at first when everything's new, is really critical.
Right. So the inverse, I guess, of that question would be, you've told us what really common threads successful leaders have. Are there any warning signs that you can think of in terms of indicating that somebody may not be tracking well?
Yeah, and it may follow a similar pattern in that they may not be seeking help, and maybe they're not delegating much to their team. They may be really overworking themselves early on at the expense of developing and delegating to their team. So those are a couple things that stand out. I think teams are a very good indication of the leaders and how they're adapting to the team. So, if the team if you're not seeing a lot of progress in a team, or if kind of the morale or the mood of the team starts to change for the worse, that's usually not a good sign.
As a fourth level leader, when you are looking at somebody that's been promoted into a new leadership role, how do you define success?
Yeah, I think one of the things is, I expect to see some different results usually. And, the time frame of that may look a little different depending on the situation, but, there should be some early signs of performance improving in the team. There should be some signs of, the culture of the team improving. And so those are a couple things that stand out. And those that I see are really starting to learn a lot early on and are starting to build that competence and confidence. That's another good sign, I think, early on.
Sure. Thinking of that really compressed first 90 days, right? Just the first 3 months that a new leader is in the role. What are you looking for from somebody in their first leadership role?
Yeah, I think someone who's really ready to dive into the role. They're ready to learn. They're really they're showing the team that they're very committed to the team. They're really ready to roll up their sleeves and get to work, because it is a lot of work to be a new leader, even to be a seasoned leader and work with a new team. There's always a lot to do in those first 90 days, and those that I think stand out for me are the ones that really do dive into that, and you can really see some of and I think I mentioned before, the timeline may differ a little bit, but I do think even in those first 90 days, there are some signs of some positive momentum that I usually see almost always, even in those first 90 days.
Right. So thinking now, Ben, along the lines of a full year in role. So you're a fourth line leader, you've got a newly promoted second line leader. Person's been in their role for a full year now. What are you really wanting to see from that person by the end of that first year?
Yeah, I think, definitely by the time a year has gone by, there really should be some measurable changes in the team, in results, be that sales results, in the culture of the team. But by the time a year has gone by, there really should be some enough measurable change, and maybe even by that time, hopefully they're ready to maybe share some of their experiences with other new leaders, or they're ready to help. They're ready to help their team move into leadership roles. So those are a few things that really you should start to see in that first year.
And, you've touched on culture a few times in some of the responses that you've given today. Can you talk a little bit about the culture that you're looking for that leader to have developed or begin developing?
Yeah, and it probably goes back a little bit to what we talked about earlier around that servant leadership mentality. So development of the team, so that each individual, we talked about the results, maybe the overall results being stronger, but also individual members of the team are being developed and are growing in their roles. That there's really a positive energy from the team, and a strong morale, an excitement about the job. Those are a few things that really stand out in a strong culture. And the great thing about that, I think you can almost walk into a room and feel some of that and see some of that, really easily.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been there before. You can almost walk in and within the first couple minutes tell what that team's group mentality is, where they're at, how healthy the team, how healthy their focus is.
Exactly.
I know exactly what you're talking about there. So what one piece of advice would you give to a newly promoted leader in their first role?
Yeah, I think, be ready and willing to learn. It's going to be hard work to learn everything that you need to, but, if you come into it with a feeling that you need to know all the answers, you're probably going to find yourself in a much different place than if you come in feeling like, I have a lot to learn. And I think part of that is understanding that you're going to make mistakes, have failures along the way. Treating those as learning opportunities as well. Part of the learning is being willing to take some risks and understand that everything's not going to go perfectly.
Right. How about advice that you would give to someone who may be interested in their first leadership role, but just feels like they're just not ready yet?
Yeah, and I've definitely come across a lot of folks in that position over my career, and I think the main advice I give to people in that situation is to find some opportunities to test yourself and to put yourself in situations like that. Maybe it's being a leader of a volunteer group, or maybe it's an opportunity within your team to take on a special project. But really, seek out and look for an opportunity to put yourself in a temporary leadership role, so to speak, so that you can see how it feels for you and make sure that it's something that's comfortable. I think there are a ton of opportunities out there to do that if you're willing to look.
Right. Great. Well, Ben, thank you for being with us this morning. Definitely appreciate your time. I'm Mike Branton. That was Ben Kipp. If you're seeing this anywhere other than leadershipspringboard.com, please go to the website. There's all kinds of resources there for new and aspiring leaders. We'll have a transcript of this conversation with Ben, along with a lot of resources that really go hand in hand with some of the things we talked about today. Thank you for being with us today. We'll talk to you soon.